Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. I am joined by both of my co-hosts for this episode, Mike Reed and Mr. Michael Hall. Reed will try to see if SWAT rolls up on him there at the park. I'm not sure if he's allowed near it, but we wanted to be able to talk about Washington. Did they get better is the big question. And so the person that we thought we'd bring in on is Mr. David Harrison, Sports Illustrated. Thank you so much for joining us, David. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good, guys. I appreciate the invite, as always.
Absolutely. So that's a point-blank question to you first and foremost. After this draft, obviously they they get Connerly, which obviously helps out their offensive line, talking about in the division against those defenses. Trey Amos, who could have easily been a first-rounder playing outside corner. Then obviously adding to Jalen Lane, the speedster, and some other pieces like Kane Medrano and then Ja'Cory Merritt. Did Washington get better, David?
Yeah, I think on paper, like overall in this offseason, I think you can clearly say that they have improved their team overall, not just the draft picks, but also, left tackle Laramie Tunsil is expected to make this offensive line just a little bit better. And, it's kind of like secondary players, right? If you have an offensive lineman that you can kind of trust is going to do his thing against his assignment, he doesn't need a whole lot of help, then you can use the other pieces, whether it just be your four linemen or a chipping tight end or inline tight end or chipping receiver or a running back in protection, whatever it is, you can use them now more often or more confidently with other guys, and that just makes them better as well. And then when you go to the draft class, right, if Josh Connerly can come in and be a true first-round talent and compete for a starting job right away, whether that be a guard, whether it be a tackle, if he takes a tackle spot, there's an experienced tackle on this roster now shifting inside to guard or shifting into depth, and it just makes the entirety of the group a little bit better. So, yeah, I think, again, on paper, you can say they clearly have gotten better. How it all comes together on the field, as is with every season, that's going to be where the rubber meets the road and whether or not this team actually gets better.
Yeah, one of the storylines everybody wants to talk about it, and I completely get it, is Gabe Taylor. I mean, what a story that would be. What do you think? People are putting a little bit of unrealistic expectations on him, though. What do you think? What can you see for Gabe?
And we also have to put this into consideration that David last year talked about Tyler Owens being the undrafted free agent to keep an eye on. So this is a good eye right here.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah, Tyler's a good dude. But, Gabe, look, listen, when I turn on the tape, man, I see a guy that certainly knows how to play football, right? The kid is physical. He's got enough speed on the field to do some good things. I saw him chase down a running back that at the time was playing for Tulane. He's going to be playing in Oregon this year. So if you're watching Big Ten football, don't be surprised if his name kind of becomes a little bit more popular as the year goes on. But I saw Gabe chase him down. There's several plays where, he's behind the play for one reason or another. It didn't go to his side or whatever reason. He chases guys down. So he's got that ability to hunt down, but he's also got the mentality to hunt down, right? There's a lot of plays where you see defensive backs or just players in general where it's that play's 40 yards away from me. I'm good. I'll wait for the next rep, but that's not his mentality. He goes out there and attacks it. And in a lot of ways, that kind of reminds you of his brother, right? He's not the same guy. And I think that's possibly the most dangerous part of this, right? Is like, you have to remember he's not his brother. And certainly he's not afraid of the connection that he has with his brother. He wants to elevate that connection. Right. But I think as a player, and certainly these coaches aren't going to get wrapped up in all that stuff. But, honestly, kind of reminds me of a little bit of a Jeremy Reese type of player, you know what I mean? Who can come in and potentially make some noise because of his effort, because of his willingness to be a kind of a dog on the field. Could he end up on the practice squad as a safety and as for potential, special teams contributions? Absolutely. I think he could. Should you expect it? No, he's an undrafted safety. He's not, he's a training or a rookie minicamp invite, right? He's not even a UDFA, priority signing. So there's a reason for it. You know what I mean? But honestly, man, I look at his tape and I kind of think, maybe he should convert to running back. Like if he can hold on to the ball, that's the question. Like, can he hold on to the rock when he's going through the tackle or going through the line of scrimmage? You know what I mean? But if he can hold on to the rock, I kind of see running back in him. But, I get why he wants to play safety and obviously he had at least a little bit of success doing it. But yeah, I think it's a great story just because of the family ties. You know what I mean? But I think there is some real football ability there as well. I just, I don't know what everybody else's expectations of him is, but, don't expect him to be like the next great Taylor safety. Right. I wouldn't put that type of expectation on him.
Right. And speaking of football ability and expectations, there's been a lot of questions about Marshawn Lattimore and what he's going to be. Is he going to be a plus player for this defense and for this team going
Mhm.
forward? Obviously, the front office and coaching staff still have faith in him, believe in him. But do you think he's going to get back to maybe, let's call it like 70% of Marshawn Lattimore from the Saints? Or do you think it's going to be more of kind of what happened towards after the trade when he got here last year?
Yeah, the interesting thing about Marshawn Lattimore is like Marshawn is the kind of guy, and I'm an Ohio State fan, so I remember watching Marshawn play college football as well. And he's always been this guy. Like he is going to play the cornerback position the way he's going to play the cornerback position.
Mm.
In some ways, that makes it a little bit difficult for the guys around him because the secondary group, especially, but really the defense as a whole, is 11 guys that are all having to move in the same direction from an idea standpoint, right? Like they're not physically moving the same direction, but if this play call we're trying to take away the deep routes on this play, we've all got to be moving in that direction. Well, Marshawn Lattimore as a cornerback, if he's playing pressed up against AJ Brown, he's not going to be covering his deep third. Like he's going to try to stop AJ Brown at the line of scrimmage.
Mhm.
So if you've got that middle third as a safety or as a dropping corner or whatever it happens to be, whatever iteration of this, say, cover three defense that we're running, you've got to kind of understand that Marshawn Lattimore may not be in his deep third as fast as you might traditionally want him to be there. And you've got to be able to play off of that. And as a coach, you've got to kind of be able to understand and accept the fact that that's the type of dude he is, because haven't seen Marshawn change who he has been since college. I don't think we're going to see it now. That being said, he's also a guy who is he understands the value in playing his role on a team, right? So like, I don't want to make it sound like he's just a selfish dude, but what he's going to try to do is play his brand of football within that role. And the more reps you get, the more time on ground, the more time on task that you get at doing this thing in this type of a defense, moving with the other 10 guys, the better you're going to be at it. So, that's not to try to like excuse everything that Marshawn did last year or didn't do last year, like that fiery attitude, drawing the flags. You hate seeing that kind of stuff. But honestly, it's kind of like Noah Igbenogany, right? I told Commanders fans when Noah Igbenogany joined this team, listen, if he's on the field for a substantial amount of time, which he did end up being last year, he's good for about a flag a game. You know what I mean? Like not every single game, but he's good for about a flag a game. And that's what you got out of Noah Igbenogany is you're going to get some good physical coverage, but you're going to get about a flag a game. And you just got to be able to live with it. So with Marshawn, there's some similarities there. The more that, he and say like Quan get time together, the more that he and say Mikey, if he moves inside, get together and those linebackers get to play underneath him and all those things, the better they'll get at it. And certainly the more he gets to rep what Joe Witt Jr. wants him to do, the more comfortable he's going to get within his role. So the football IQ part of it, like understanding the calls, the checks, the adjustments that need to be made, they were already ranting and raving about how good he was there already last year. Now it's about putting the knowledge with his style to the play on the field. And, you'd love to say that, yeah, it's absolutely going to happen. But the truth of the matter is, I remember seeing Nnamdi Asomugha be an all-pro, go to the Philadelphia Eagles and completely bomb out. So it's not guaranteed. But is there a better chance this year you're going to get that versus last year? Absolutely.
My man. And one position like that kind of got to me trying to be an evaluator, and that DN spot. Obviously, they felt good about what they had comparatively. Maybe they do add some other vets down the road here, of course. But what did we miss with that DN spot, David? I'm not sure if you were in the same line of thinking before the draft.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody you want, especially when you're going to play this aggressive brand of defense that Dan Quinn and Joe Witt Jr. bring to the table, you want that elite pass rusher, right? In Dallas, they had it with Micah Parsons. And you're kind of looking for like, who's that Micah Parsons in Washington? Well, last year it was Dante Fowler Jr. He rips off 10.5 sacks, career year for him, all those good things. And you come into the offseason, and the question is kind of like chicken or the egg, right? Like, was it Dante or was it the scheme accentuating Dante? Well, from the fact that Dante's not here, I would say that the team essentially feels like it's a scheme more than Dante feels like it was Dante, if that makes sense. Right? I'm not saying that the team doesn't appreciate what Dante did or his talents or what he could do in this defense again, but perhaps Dante felt like it was more just his raw ability than it actually was, at least from the coach's standpoint. So the question is, can they get similar type of production from one or two guys on this roster currently? I think Jacob Martin is a very interesting tape study. He's a guy that I watched from his tape in, like, say, with Chicago, and he certainly has some bend. He certainly got some explosiveness off the edge. And he certainly has some athleticism. Those are the things that Dante Fowler brings to the field as well. I think Dante is a little bit quicker, a little bit faster, So that could be, have an impact. But I think also Jacob's a little bit better as a run defender on the outside. So the question now is, what kind of games do you play to get Jacob free? Because, again, and I don't want to take too much away from Dante, but a lot of the production that he had during the season came because he was either rushing free without a blocker or rushing with an advantageous situation because of what was going on in the front line to occupy opposing blockers. So, is that more Dante? Is that more, the scheme? We're going to find out, because obviously Dante's not here and they didn't draft a premier edge outside linebacker like a Donovan Izaraku type of guy to do that. Now, at the same time, you got a guy like Kane Medrano, who's a safety linebacker hybrid, but you also kind of see some athleticism in him to where he could fill an outside linebacker type of role. And there's other players on the field. Javon Kinlaw, can he come off the edge and be kind of a strong edge pass rusher in a little bit of a bigger set, not a big set, but a little bit of a bigger set? Absolutely. So don't underestimate the creativity of Joe Witt Jr. either. Just because there looks like to be a 1-for-1 replacement player wise doesn't necessarily mean it's just going to be, we're going to cut this guy out of the scheme, put you in the scheme, and now the scheme is the same. It could always evolve.
Right. And that's kind of the other thing about that. Like, you kind of got to trust them. Getting to the quarterback wasn't their biggest issue last year. I mean, it wasn't great, but it wasn't. Stopping the run was the big issue with the Commanders defense. But switching sides, I mean, you touched on Josh Connerly a little bit. What do you think are realistic expectations for him? Do you expect him to come in immediately at right tackle, or do you actually think he might be better at guard?
I think he's just going to compete. You know what I mean? I think, honestly, he looks to me to be more of a tackle type than a guard type. I don't know that his anchor is incredibly strong, and I think that he's just kind of better off when he's able to kind of get some space between him and the defender, read and react, and do those types of things. But he's super athletic. Like, the guy, you could see him lining up inside. Like I said, I think he'd have to bulk up a little bit more, but be able to get out lateral, be able to pull, things like that. But I think we saw it last year with these Washington Commanders team, and I think what takes away from the recollection of this is that your starting five more or less was what everybody projected it to be heading into training camp, outside of the question marks like, where is Brandon Coleman going to really fit in? And is he going to be the full-time left tackle, or is he going to rotate, which is obviously what he ended up doing. I think Josh Connerly and an Andrew Wiley rotation at right tackle is certainly well within the reason to see this year. It worked last year at left tackle. Teams, coaching staffs, decision makers love to repeat things that worked in the past, because they say it worked once. Don't fix it if it ain't broke type of situation. And Andrew is another vet like Cornelius Lucas, who's not going to throw a fit. He's not going to stomp his feet about losing reps to a rookie. He's going to go out there and be a big brother and do everything he needs to do to help Josh Connerly be successful, because that's what's better for the team. And, Andrew Wiley's a guy who's got a Super Bowl ring without having to be the star on the team. So he knows what that's like, and he's going to be up for that task. So that being said, I think the majority of us, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but I think, most often your projected quote unquote starting lineup is obviously Tunsil on the left side, Allegretti, Biotish. The right guard is a little bit up in the air, and then right tackle eventually will be Josh Connerly Jr. But again, the elevation or the acceleration of his development is a big question there. But I will tell you this, going back to last training camp, we saw as many different variations of a front five as you could see out of one team, because Bobby Johnson did not rush to that decision. He gave every guy every rep possible to go out there and say, you're the best guy for this job on this part of the offensive line. Okay. Tyler Biotish pretty quickly solidified himself as the top center. I think that'll probably happen again this year. Laramie Tunsil is your left tackle. But those other three positions, they're all going to get the opportunity to show that they're the best guy for that job. And I remember talking about Bobby Johnson coming in from the New York Giants organization and how much New York media hated in 2023. They didn't decide their starting five offensive lineman for the regular season until right before week one. Bobby Johnson's the kind of coach, he's going to take it. If he is not sure who the best five is, he's not going to rush to that decision. So whatever the starting five ends up being, whether it's what we project now or something different, they're going to give every guy out there an opportunity to prove that they need to be a part of that group.
Right. The versatility too, just having three tackles that can also play guard, and you think that they can excel there. I think that's going to give Bobby Johnson, who was, by the way, the one coach last year that everybody hated on when we signed him because of what he did in New York.
OG Bobby Johnson.
OG Bobby Johnson turned it up.
Yeah. And a lot of that is because of what happened, right? He didn't make that decision on the best five until week one, but the Giants' offensive line wasn't very good. So at the same time, it's like, how much do you really put that on Bobby, and how much is he sitting back there going like, okay, well, which crap sandwich is going to be the easiest to swallow? Well, this is the best one that we can swallow, right? So there's a difference between waiting to put together your best five and waiting to put together your least bad five, right? And I think in Washington, he gets the opportunity to put together his best five.
Exactly. So obviously they added some pieces on the offensive side of the ball. We talked about Tunsil. They added Debo. They drafted a running back. How do you see the offense? Do you see the offense and Cliff kind of evolving the offense going into year two, or and if you do see one, do you see like a weakness on this offense, or do you see them kind of just not really taking like another step, but kind of just I guess really taking another step if you want to call it that.
Yeah, right now, if I had to pick out a weakness on the offense, I would put it at the interior offensive line, right? Just because we're not 100% solidified on what that's going to look like. I think Tyler Biotish, his physical presence, but also his IQ and his ability to set the protection is incredibly valuable to a young quarterback. So he's great as an anchor, but without Sam and with the competition that you expect somebody to have with Nick Allegretti, whether it's Connerly or Coleman or whoever, it's just the question is just how's it going to take shape, right? They like athletic linemen. They like guys who can pull. They like guys who can get to the second and third levels. That's where Nick Allegretti has a clear advantage over a lot of these guys. Like he's just kind of quick up the field. But they might sacrifice a little bit of that agility and speed to get better protection up front because this offensive line did give up near league leading pressures last year, and you don't want Jaden running for his life every week just because he can do it. So that's going to be, I think, the interesting part. But they got better receiver. If the line gets better, the run game's going to get better. The tight ends, I think Ben Sinnott is going to be able to do a lot more just from an opportunity standpoint this year than he was last year. And then Jaden, look, equipped with another year or with an NFL year's worth of experience and knowledge. I mean, you could see him getting better, and it's a little bit dangerous because that's when you start getting into like MVP conversations. But look, if that's where he needs to be placed, then that's where he needs to be placed. So the offense was top 5 in scoring last year. I think one of the big question marks is Cliff Kingsbury and how innovative is he really this second go round in the National Football League. We saw him kind of hit that rut in the middle of the season. I don't think that was just Cliff, but I think there was some other things going on with the team as well. It was very real. It was something that the Arizona Cardinals people that I talked to had kind of warned me about. It showed up, but then fortunately, I think that Tennessee Titans game, right, they were able to kind of break loose of that. And really from that point on during the rest of the season, we saw the evolution of not just the offense, but Jaden specifically. So can Cliff come with that, innovative attitude and approach from week one this year? Because now everybody's got 20 weeks worth of tape or so to come after them with, you know what I mean? So that's a big part of the question too. But if Cliff can rise to that challenge, then I think, saying this team goes to top 3 in scoring is certainly well within reach.
All right, now David, a couple more questions for you, but the schedule release is coming out very, very soon. What do you think? What is your prediction for the home opener?
Ooh, the home opener. Ooh, I haven't even gotten to that. I've got an assignment from WSA9.com to predict or try to predict the amount and which games will be primetime games. But I haven't done what would be the home opener. That's a really good one. I would probably, I think a lot of people want the Eagles, right? Like you want the Eagles as soon as possible because what you don't want is a situation we see unfold in the NFL, all the time, which is by the time, this team sees this team's quarterback is hurt or their star receiver is out or something. You know what I mean? Look at the divisional round, right? The Washington Commanders come out there and create 5 turnovers against the Detroit Lions offense, which was healthy, right? Like as healthy as you can be in January, February of football anyway. And everybody still says, yeah, but the Lions were banged up. No, the Lions were banged up on defense. This is still a top 5 scoring offense. So let's not even worry about that. But the Lions offense is something that was out there. They had Jahmyr Gibbs. They had Dave Montgomery, Amon-Ra, obviously Jared Goff. And the Commanders defense, the question mark of this team, went out there and put a whooping on those guys. So I think that I would love to see a Lions matchup early. You know what I mean? The Eagles matchup early. Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels. That's going to be something. Look, the NFL is going to try to make it a thing for at least through the first 3 years, whether it needs to be a thing or not. So you could see that being an early thing because if that happens, then it could be, oh, well, maybe, now that Caleb's got a new coaching staff and better team around him, maybe he would have been the rookie of the year last year. We can all debate that all year long. Or Jaden can just come out there and those boys can get the win and we can put it all to bed.
Absolutely.
But yeah, there's a lot of good options. You know what I mean? Dallas, who wouldn't want to beat down the Cowboys early in the season as well? So
I'm right there with you. Now, rookie camp coming up, and there's always somebody that steals the light. And so who would you predict is going to be the rookie minicamp star?
Look, Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt is like my favorite dude in this class. I think he's the biggest steal. I know Trey Amos was a steal. Jalen Lane arguably is a steal, but I think Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt, the running back out of Arizona, is the biggest steal because I feel like if He didn't lose his final year of eligibility, which I've got beef with the NCAA for that. Like, look, if you're going to steal this last year of eligibility from the kid, do it before the draft. Like, do it before he doesn't have the opportunity to go play professional football. You know what I mean? Anyway, that's a different discussion. But Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, I think if he gets to play his season at Arizona, I think he's probably a 4th-round pick at worst. You know what I mean? So you're not getting him in the 7th round like this team did. The fact that he showed up to the East-West Shrine Bowl in the shape that he did, as prepared as he did, and then just dominated out there. Like, I think that shows so much about this dude's work ethic, his willingness and desire to be prepared for when the moment arrives. And so when his moment arrives, step on an NFL practice field for the first time, I think he's going to come to put on a show. And the running backs are hard because there's no pads, there's no hitting. So like running backs really can't, showcase all of their stuff right away. But I think when you talk about a 7th round running back, I think he's going to be able to do enough things to where those of us who are sitting there saying like, look, I've been around the Brian Robinsons, the Austin Ecklers, the Antonio Gibsons on this team, and we've seen them practice. We've seen them move, and this kid might walk a little bit different. Last year's rookie camp is all about the confidence that Jane Daniels brought into it, the preparation you could tell he had already had for his first NFL practice. I think we might get a little bit of that experience with Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt as well, and I'd love to see them come out and throw some checks, throw some shifts at them early and see, like, does Ja'Cory stumble? Does he go to the wrong place? Does coach have to fix him? Because I feel like they're not going to have to. And if they don't have to, that's incredibly impressive for a 7th round running back that nearly went undrafted.
Absolutely. Now, last one I have for you, sir. Let's just talk about overall with Washington heading into the season. Like with Jalen Lane, do you think that Jalen Lane is going to be seeing some attention this year on offense?
Yeah, I do think he's going to get in the rotation there. I don't know. I'm not going to say he's going to like jump Noah Brown to be that like 3rd receiver, but honestly, like, it's really such a positionless group when it comes to a depth chart. Like, there's going to be guys, listed here, listed there, and all that stuff. But really, it's like, do we have a go package? Do we have a short yardage package, a red zone package, right? Like, and everybody's going to have their role to play. And it's just going to depend on the game flow. Like, if we get into a bunch of 3rd and 8s in this game, you might see more Jalen Lane. But if we get into some 3rd and 3s where we might run the ball anyway, we might go with like a Luke McCaffrey who might be able to box out a little bit better, or Noah Brown who can go out there and use his size to his advantage, right? So I don't even like the depth chart conversation, but Jalen's explosiveness, his ability to move with the ball in his hands, just the idea of having him and Debo on opposite sides of the field, and now as a defense, you've got to guard a mobile quarterback, a potential run up the middle, but also 2 screen threats on either side of the ball. Like, I don't know how you do it. If as a defensive coordinator, I think you just make the best call you can and pray that it doesn't bite you in the butt. But yeah, Jalen, I think, is going to have a significant role this year. And even beyond that, as a return specialist, he did have some muffs in college, so you got to work on that. But those are things that can be worked on and can be improved on. So I think Jalen Lane, from a special teams perspective, also from an offensive perspective, and look, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt's got kick return experience in his background too. So I think you're going to see a good amount of him from special teams as well, and that I think will work his way into the offensive rotation. So really good class, man. I mean, you talk about the potential of these guys to contribute early. I think all 5 of these dudes could have significant contributions in one of the 3 phases.
Absolutely love to hear it. David, before you go, would you like to plug your social media handle so anybody following can?
Yeah, I appreciate you. So X and all that's D Harrison 82. I think my Instagram's like D Harrison _ 82 is a variation of that. And then of course, WSA9.com, working as a writer reporter on ground for them more and more every single year. And then on SI, the Commanders site, or on SI as well. And then Locked On Commanders 5 days a week is what we say, but it's pretty much every day right now. Just there's so much to talk about, and so I'm having so much fun breaking it all down. I've been breaking down secondary tape all day, and I can't wait to deliver the way too many observations that I have about these guys. But it's going to be a lot of fun.
My man, David, have a great Sunday, sir. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you for the invite.
Of course. All right, everybody. We just talked to the man, Mr. David Harrison of SI. I always appreciate talking to David. And now the boys are back together. What I mean by that is Hall and me and Hall. We do have the 3rd wheel over here. What's up, buddy?
When you address me, I want you to call me superstar.
So, Reed, we didn't get to talk to you last week, but real quick, if you wanted, I know you got a lot to say about the draft.
Nah, just busy going viral. No big deal.
Oh, yeah, because your tweet about RFK.
Yeah.
Do you want to explain that tweet, Reed?
Nah, man, there's not much to explain. Just, JFK got shot in the head. So
he just had a couple million views on Twitter because he said just change.
Kyle, it wasn't a couple million. It was 3 million.
Couple million.
Three.
I'm surprised SNL hasn't
Deal.
called you yet.
They're trying, but my line's probably been busy or something. I don't know.
Right. But we don't need to repeat the joke on here. If you guys want to know, just reach out in the comments and I guess I'll just post it on there for what Reed had to say. But to wrap up this episode,
The joke didn't even make sense, though. First of all,
Well, it
did.
was actually a
First of
pretty
all,
good joke.
It was.
it is, but RFK got shot too, and plus it's not going to have a retractable down.
Yeah, but your delivery was pretty good, man.
Yeah,
Let's just leave it at that.
Obviously.
All right, now let's go to the fan questions. Hall, this one is from the Colonel. He's saying, everything I'm reading about Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt says we got a huge steal in the draft. MVP in the Shrine Bowl, an insane RAS score. How does this happen, and how are we lucky enough to get him?
Yeah, shout out to the NCAA for making him ineligible because it definitely tanked his draft stock, like David Harrison was just talking about. He was a standout in New Mexico, transferred to, I guess it's still the Pac-10 or Pac-12, whatever they're calling themselves nowadays. But transferred to Arizona, played that one game randomly against his old school in New Mexico, but became ineligible. And then I heard that throughout the entire season, he still went to meetings. He was still like obviously training and whatnot. So just shows that he loves football and then for him to, like David Harrison said, to go into the Shrine Bowl without playing the entire season, the regular season, and be the standout there, the MVP, come in there prepared like that, just shows you that he's a hard worker. And yeah, like you said, good RAS score. He ran like a 4.440 or something like that. So he's definitely a guy that looks like he's going to be able to challenge, not really like the running back one spot, I don't think maybe, but I think he'll definitely challenge for a couple reps in the offense eventually. And it's just another weapon for Cliff to get on the field with some more speed added to the offense. So definitely love the pick. And yeah, shout out, like I said, shout out to the NCAA for making him ineligible and drafting his draft stock for him to fall to us in the 7th round.
Yeah, it's a Colonel. It's a combination of being lucky and also being very good at what you do. Early on in this process, my whole point was with a heavy running back loaded class. I can't tell you how many times I've said this. That based on that, you don't need to invest in high value into that position, knowing that you have other positions of value there, when you can just wait until later rounds to find a guy who has traits that you like. And that's exactly what they had with Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. And the NCAA ineligibility, if you think about it in fantasy football, Colonel, it's almost like drafting Cooper Kupp in the fantasy draft right the same year that Matt Stafford got there. Everyone's looking at him saying, well, he doesn't put up all that many points, right? But he didn't have a quarterback last year, so maybe he's floating around that 4th to 5th round range. When he finally links up with Matt Stafford in that season, he booms into like literally a number 1 or number 2 overall pick, right? And that's almost a certain thing you could look at with Ja'Cory Merritt, where you're looking at it saying, well, he wasn't very productive last year. Why is that? Oh, it's because he's ineligible, but he has that capability. So if you're not worried about the ineligibility now, that's something you could get really good production on. It could really maximize things, which is what they did here. Instead of investing high into the draft, they stayed patient and they were able to knock it out of the park with a really good situation walking into with a really good young man that obviously has some pedigree behind him. And because you're saying that he was ineligible to all year and then goes to the East-West Shrine Bowl, like we just heard from David, and is rocked up, been working out, keeping his body in shape, and then goes out there and dominates, it shows you that he didn't just chill during that time. Like, oh, I'm ineligible, I'm going to do whatever I want. No, like, obviously he worked very hard to be able to put himself in that position. So when he got to the East-West Shrine Bowl, he wasn't going to lose out on that opportunity to play football again. And just that alone, I think that you feel very comfortable with who they selected there.
Yep.
Did you already answer because Reed dipped out?
Yeah, I answered first.
My bad, I'm all over the place. Now the next question from the Colonel, that was a good one. Can you shed any light on the Commanders and UCLA Bruins connection, Hall? Not only did we draft Kane Medrano, but we also picked up running back Keegan Jones, another Bruin, as a camp invite.
Yeah, Adam Peters, I think is a UCLA graduate, alum. Yeah, I don't know if he graduated or not, but he's definitely an alum. Ken Norton.
Yep.
Yeah, Ken Norton was out there coaching previously before he landed the job here with Dan Quinn and this coaching staff. So that's the kind of the ties to the linebacker that they drafted as well. And yeah, so I mean, obviously, I don't think they just looked at the board and said, "Where's some UCLA guys? Let me draft them." I
Right.
think it was more of just like a coincidence and familiarity thing with obviously Ken Norton's Jr. So yeah, it's basically just that. Adam Peters, Ken Norton. I mean, obviously, I think Adam Peters probably still goes back to his school, has a lot of connections there as well. So he probably has a lot of information on these guys as well. So I think it all just kind of came into one big, like, what do you call it? Coincidence type of situation.
Yeah, that's the same exact thing I'd be saying about when Rivera would hire or bring in players that he coached.
Carolina, yeah.
Yeah, like you have that relationship, you know what you're getting out of that person, and so you feel very confident in them, which is, I'm sure, what Ken Norton was saying about Kane Madrano, given the history there. I do think the Keegan thing might just be the fact of knowing that he was there, seeing how he's worked, and just bringing him in as an invite. I know he's 5'10", 185 pounds, of a smaller type of running back. He had 201 receiving yards last season for UCLA, only a handful of touchdowns, but he out greatly more produced in the receiving game, which kind of tells you how they utilized him. So maybe this is just a way for them to see putting an electric running back there with a receiving background and seeing if anything can work in that sort of sense. But I don't think it's. I just think it's more of like a familiarity thing, like Hall kind of talked about. With Kane Madrano, that was the one I had questions about. Right now, I'm not saying it was a bad pick or anything. I'm just saying there was questions. But you can obviously see from watching his tape that he's somebody that fits the mold of a linebacker, especially one that can move in coverage. But I truly believe that he's at his best when he's blitzing the quarterback. And that's when you really see that burst come into play because he's not really thinking. He's just reacting and doing and what he's supposed to be doing. And that's when you really see that explosion tip off. And I definitely think that he's somebody who can play like Frankie Louvu in a backup kind of sense. And so I think that they did a very good job, regardless of the alum favorness or not. You know what I mean? Now, next question that we have is submitted in the Discord, which was submitted by our guy Deluxe. On May the 4th be with you, he says, Hall. On May the 4th, it only feels appropriate to ask a question about Luke. What role do you see Luke McCaffrey playing on the team this year?
It's a good question. Hopefully, he has another year. He has another year under his belt playing the wide receiver position. It'll be year 2 in the offense, so he has some continuity as there as well. And so, yeah, hopefully, I know everyone was talking about in the beginning of the season where his like separation rate or he was open a lot and whatnot. He just wasn't getting looks from Jaden Daniels. And then once Jaden got a little bit more comfortable with the downfield passing game and scanning the field a little bit more, the reps weren't really there for Luke McCaffrey for whatever reason, and they were using him on special teams as the kick return guy whenever Eckler went out. So, yeah, I think that I mean, obviously they drafted him, so they have faith in him. I think that, like I said, year 2 in the system, another year of playing the wide receiver position under his belt. Hopefully, he'll be able to crack that like the top 4, maybe like top 5 wide receiver position. And yeah, hopefully he's a contributor on the field this year as well.
Yeah, I could definitely see him being the type to back up Terry in the sense of being out wide. I know last year he was used a lot in the slot. Do think that he needs to thicken up a little bit, of course, but with Luke, I definitely could see him being somebody that has like the Diami Brown kind of come up where performs really well in camp, and then you're like, okay, well maybe he could contribute, right? And being in his second year, he definitely gives off those kind of vibes where he's going to be the standout on second team, and you're just like waiting for him to get that chance. And that's the best case scenario for Luke McCaffrey. It's just going into the competition, earning those spots. Ben Sinnott learned that last year. Now Luke McCaffrey has to go through it. It was very thin last year, but this year not so much. Adding Jalen Lane and Debo Samuel, KJ Osborne, and Michael Gallup, that's a hefty amount. So you got to outperform, you got to work hard, and I know that McCaffrey family's coming in ready to go. You know what I mean? So I definitely think that he's going to contribute. I just don't think it's going to be a hefty amount. I just think it's going to be in those more important situations, the third downs. Like he might be the third down guy, if that makes sense, given that he does have very good hands. Now the next question is from Andy Lockhart in the UK. Oi, who was in Green Bay for the draft. Obviously, his co-host Hartley made the pick for Kane Medrano out of UCLA. Did a very good job. I know they had a great week out there. They even got a picture taken with Roger Goodell. Lucky them, you know. Hopefully he signed it for him. Now the question from Lockhart is, if you was the defensive coordinator, how would you mask the deficiencies at the edge position so people did not run all day on us?
I think it's going to be kind of what they did last year. They're going to see Frankie Louvu getting moved around on the line and blitzing off the edge or up the middle, whatever it may be.
He
They're going to see
specifically said run on us.
in the run game. Oh well, that's why they got like they brought in Goldman and they got a lot thicker, a lot bigger down the middle of the defense and the interior. And then, like you said, with bringing Kinlaw, obviously he's a big dude. They're going to put him on the edge, hopefully to set the edge. Uh, Dietrich Wise is a really good run defender as well, and setting the edge coming from New England. So if they're going to move Mikey Samuels still back into the slot, Jonathan Jones, those are guys that are physical corners that can get up in the run game as well and help out in setting the edge and pushing the running back or the receiver to the inside to the pursuing defense. So I think that and again, a lot of these guys year two in the system as well, like a lot of continuity, so they kind of know what Joe Witt wants out of them as well. So I think that I think that's gonna just kind of all go into one. Like I said, thicker in the interior to anchor and stop the run up the middle, and guys that have pretty good experience in their careers, veterans, in stopping the run at their previous destination. So I think hopefully all the defense will come together.
Yeah, well, there's a couple ways to be able to do this in order to eliminate the run threat, right? The one way, which they have shown already, is by putting in bigger bodies. And what I mean by that is we saw at times where Deron Payne was actually lined up at defensive end, right? Last year, you could have Javon Kinlaw in there. You can add in Newton as well. Another big body on the outside as well, like a Jalen Holmes or what's his face from Dallas? My gosh, why am I not thinking of his name right now? The defensive end, Dorrance Armstrong. My goodness. Put them like that, being like you have the weight on the defensive line, Andy, to the point where they're not going to get moved out of position, right? Because what you're trying to do is I correlate it to water. You're trying to build a dam, and any water that seeps through is going to be their ability to be able to get extra yards on you at the second level, right? The other way is by spreading out the defensive line. So essentially what you're doing is you're moving them out wider. So that way there's an incentive for the offense to attack the interior. And if your big issue is possibly your linebackers being able to get sideline to sideline on wide plays or quick wide plays, like we saw in the NFC Championship game, that could be an incentive for them to run inside, and that way it benefits your linebackers because they don't have to move in a very far place in a very quick amount of time. That's also another way you could do it, but ultimately it's by putting more weight on the outside and not allowing, because what you're doing is you're allowing your linebackers to stay free. They're not able to have a moment of getting a hand on them and stopping them in any way with the athletes on offense nowadays. So you have to make sure that they're clean so they can get to their spot when they're supposed to be there. Because if they have any hesitation or any blockage whatsoever, that's all she wrote, in my personal opinion. Now, Hall, I have some questions for you to wrap up this episode, bro. I wanted to ask you, what do you think happens at running back? You know, you were clamoring for running back through that draft process. They got Merritt in the 7th round, of course, and with his ineligibility, we've already talked about him. But, you know, a lot of people think that Merritt could easily take over for Brian Robinson by season starter during the season. What do you think?
No, I think Brian Robinson's still RB1. I think that Merritt has to climb the ranks as far as like he has to show that he's a good in pass protection as well. He's gonna have to. Well, according to like I said, David Harrison was talking about how he's a guy that's really prepared. Just going back to again, he was ineligible and he was still going to meetings every day. He was still at practices every day. He was still around the team. So, like I said, it's definitely a guy that seems like he's gonna have his head in the playbook and always like thinking football and whatnot. And so I think that I don't think he'll challenge early on as RB1. I think that maybe like by midseason, he might start getting some reps at the running back, maybe a lot more touches, a couple more touches here and there. But Yeah, I think that it's really just up to him. If he comes in prepared and he shows that he can handle the pass protection, he can handle the checks, he can be a willing pass catcher as well. I think that yeah, they'll put him on the field. But I do think that we got to go to Lance Newmark as well. He came from Detroit. They got David Montgomery and Jameer Gibbs, kind of like that lightning and thunder type of thing. So maybe they're gonna go that route as well, where it's like Brian Robinson is kind of the David Montgomery type of role, and Merritt is the Jameer Gibbs type of role, where he's like the faster kind of scat back type of guy that can come in, change a pace, and take it to the house from wherever on the field. So, yeah, I think that it's not going to be like he's not going to be RB1. I do think that maybe by like midseason he'll be challenging. Maybe he'll get like 4 to 5 touches a game, something like that. Maybe.
Yeah, I definitely think that they're under the mindset of like the best player plays, and so I think it's much more up to like what Brian Robinson, if he starts doing a radio show every week with the Junkies, I think there might be an issue. But if he's able to continue staying working hard and being able to produce and not turning the football over, we know jobs. That's the number one thing for a running back is making sure you're not fumbling the ball. And both of our guys did that in the NFC Championship game, and so that's something we got to fix, of course, going into next season. Now, this question, because we got rookie camp coming up, and so I wanted to ask you, what positions will have the most fierce competition at? Maybe not just for rookie minicamp, but let's group that in with OTAs.
Um, we got a lot of offensive line depth. I think that, and then like David Harrison was talking about earlier, obviously Larry Tunsil is locked for his spot. Biotish is locked for his spot, and you could say Sam Cosmi's locked in for his spot, but he's injured right now. So there's really three positions up for grabs right now, and I think that that's going to be the biggest, most like looked at, the biggest, heaviest competition in camp. And I guess 1A, you could also say the receivers, just because we talked about earlier them adding Lane. They brought back Noah Brown. It's going to be a deep wide receiver room, so it's going to be tough to kind of crack that rotation. But yeah, I do think with all the offensive line depth, I think that and 3 positions technically being open for the start of the season, I think that that'll be the position to watch, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's essentially what I was going with, but I'm going right down that route with you. I do think defensive end is the one that you look at, and especially with the tackles that we have brought in here, being able to solidify the offensive line, adding into the equation. Obviously, we don't have Sam Cosmi, but still, they got some hefty guys up front that could pay the bill. And I think that iron sharpens iron, man. We're really going to see because they divulge a lot of assets into the defensive line too. Not maybe a crazy amount of assets, what like with adding Wise, being able to go and get Javon Kinlaw, of course, adding him into the equation. Jacob Martin is another one. Dorrance Armstrong is still here. Deron Payne and Johnny Newton. That's going to be a really solid competition between those guys and who's going to get starting
And you
reps.
got to think about they like Jalen Holmes, who was here
Right.
at the end of the season. He had a
From the
good end of the
Jets.
season, and John Baptiste as well, who they drafted last year. I know they really like him as well, and he was before he got injured, he was kind of making some splash plays here and there. So definitely defensive end is going to be a position to look at. You're right.
Yeah, and like obviously going into this process, I was huge into them adding a defensive end, and obviously that's why I've had to humble myself again, like be able to make sure I'm doing the right things, look at the right things. But I can understand from their mindset of saying instead of going for speed sacks, we're going for coverage sacks. And that's why they go and get Trey Amos, right? That's why they have these kind of defensive ends and D line that they have in order to make sure they're having strap coverage on the back end and saying, okay, you're not going to be able to get your first read. What are you going to do now? And I think that's going to force a lot of issues. And maybe that's what they're counting on. And I'm not one to say that's wrong because I think that they know what they got. And Ryan Kerrigan and company, I think they can get the most out of these guys just given their skill set, right? Because a lot of them, like Javante Jean Baptiste, you could say is a lot like Ryan Kerrigan in being that persistent kind of pass rusher where he's not going to win with speed, but he's going to continue working hard and he's going to find a sack or two every now and again. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Now, the next question I have for you, what is one surprise position you could see a starter getting swapped?
Like someone losing their position.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you could say. I, um,
Surprise.
I would say like more based on like a rotation, like it would force a
Yeah, I
rotation.
got you. Surprise, surprise, surprise. I would say I'll say receiver. I do think that they really like Jeremy Lane. That's your guy. But I do think that
Jalen Lane.
what did I say, Jeremy?
Yeah,
Yeah,
It's
Jalen Lane.
Jalen the fast lane.
Yeah,
That's what.
Jalen Lane. Yeah, I think Jalen Lane. I think he's gonna really, really impress them with their speed. That's another guy that I know. Like I was listening to the radio the day after they drafted him, or the day of that they drafted him, and his receiver coach from VTech came on in 106, and they were talking about how he's like the son of a high school coach, so he's always been around the game. He's a dude that loves football. He's a guy that came from Middle Tennessee in the slot, then he came to VTech and was working on the outside as well. So he has that position versatility. We talked about the speed, and he's just a guy. If you like, they showed his highlight tape. He's a guy that can do the jet sweeps, the reverses. He's just a guy that you got to get his ball to get the ball into his hand because he makes big plays with it. So I do think that he's going to surprise a lot of people, turn a lot of heads with the speed, and I do think that Cliff's going to push to get him on the field as quick as possible.
All right, that's a good one. That's a good one. I would also venture to say strong safety. Maybe we could see some shakeups there based on what happens. Obviously, we have a lot of confidence in what they have at the moment, but maybe that's one of those positions that they do have some rotation based stuff in the works for us. And I do think that it has to, without saying that the competition between Trey Amos and Mike Samerstow at outside corner to start camp is going to be amazing.
Yeah.
That's one I'm really looking forward to. And we talked
Oh,
about with iron sharpens iron, Debo and Terry, Jalen Lane and company going up against Trey Amos, Mike
yeah, it's
Samerstill,
gonna be good.
and Marshawn Lattimore. That's going to be a lot of fun to be able to watch. So,
It's
fan
gonna get
base, if
physical.
you're going to training camp or anything like that, make sure you bring some popcorn because it should be a fantastic time. Now, the quarterback room. Who do you think stays?
Who do they have? Obviously, Jaden's going to stay.
Marcus
Marcus Mariota
Mariota,
is going to
Josh
stay.
Johnson,
Sam
and
Hartman's here. They bring
Hartman,
back
and then
what's his name?
yes,
What's the other dude that was here last year?
and yes, whatever you're thinking of, yes.
Yeah. So they got five right now. Obviously the top two are going to be here. I'll say that the third quarterback. I know they wanted to be Sam Hartman because he's been here and he's been around the facility. They know him, but Josh Johnson can't body pro. I'll go with Sam Hartman. I think he'll be the practice squad and third quarterback.
Okay. Now, next question I have for you all. After the draft, did Washington get better?
I think they did. I think that if you want to include like the draft picks that they gave up for Laramie Tunsil and the picks they gave up for Debo and add them into the draft class, I think they definitely got better. They added a speedy wide receiver like we talked about. They added a running back that they think that can be a field flipper for them as far as like taking it from one side of the field to the next. He's a guy that can be a home run hitter with speed. They upgraded the offensive line with Connerly coming in. And so they're going to move Coleman so that and bringing in Tunsil, like I said, so that solidifies like 2 to 3 spots on the offensive line just by that one draft pick. So I definitely think they got better. And I do think that on paper, obviously you got to put it together on the field, but on paper, they definitely got better as a team.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Just obviously speaking of what they added in the offseason, adding Laramie Tunsil, that frees up a lot of things offensively for Cliff Kingsbury being able to not have to
More
chip,
chips.
not have to chip so many guys over on the left side. But also adding Connerly creates that competition on the right side. Now that you're without Cosme, you're going against Philly and these defensive lines. That is a really awesome recipe going in and building in the trenches. Said on Twitter, I can't go against and talk crap about adding in the trenches because that's what this football team needs to, going against some very good defensive lines and offensive lines. And that's obviously what they've done. But they also added some lightning here. And what I mean by that with like Trey Amos, now you have Marshawn Lattimore, Mikey Samerstill, Trey Amos, Noah Igbenogany. Of course, they added Jones in free agency as well. They've turned that into a strength. And a lot like the offensive line, it's the same sort of scenario where you've made it a strength now. And now you have your really good recipe at quarterback, not including that you've added Jalen Lane at slot and also Debo Samuel. And so now you're really looking at this team saying, of course they've gotten better. I don't think there's any other way. And I know that Vegas and other predictors are having Washington have a worse record than last season because it's a harder schedule. And I would say you're most likely just common sense. You're right. but that's not including the fact that Washington got better. And that might be what is the most important aspect of it all, in my
Also,
personal
we
opinion.
always look at this every year about, oh, the schedule, it's so daunting, this team, that team, strength of schedule. Injuries happen, teams either live up to expectations or they don't live up to expectations. So the schedule can go either way. Like, yes, obviously the teams that we're playing, the NFC North, the AFC West, those are good teams in those divisions. But like you said, it's all about when you play those teams, and the injuries and all that stuff factors into it as well. And again, like you said, you're not. They're also not factoring in the fact that Washington got better as well. It's not just these other teams they're playing like a harder division, harder schedule. These teams got to play Washington too, who is a good team, a developing team, an up and coming team, and they're here to stay. So, yeah, I do think that they got better, and I do think that even with the harder schedule, they're still going to win. Hopefully, 10+ games, depending on like no crazy injuries or nothing like that.
Yeah, and in my personal opinion, what they did with Connerly, adding him at right tackle, which obviously allows you to move, in my opinion, Coleman to right guard. I don't want to leave Connerly on an island out there, even if it is Andrew Wiley. Even much more so the point of what I'm trying to make, in the sense that Brandon Coleman needs to be a right guard. Because if you have Nick Herbig there at left guard, that is you're really cooking with gas at that point, where the only position you really have a true competition at is left guard. That is a very good position for Washington to be in, given with what they had last year with how many injuries that they did have. And that's not even including what's going to happen if you insert Sam Cosme into the equation, which we don't ultimately know when that's going to be. We hope sooner rather than later, but not to speed anything up, right? But just saying that, without a doubt, they've gotten better, dude. They've done everything that they need to do. They've added some more weapons. They've added to the defense and some more ability to be able to lock down things, especially going against some of these wide receivers like Malik Neighbors, A.J. Brown, of course, and Devontae Smith, and then C.D. Lamb and company in Dallas. It's gonna be difficult. So they added to the trenches, and we added the kryptonite to Abdul Carter, and that just speaks even more so of that first round pick and how smart it was by them. Last one I have for you, Kane Medrano. What do you think he adds to the linebackers?
Speed, speed, speed. Definitely add speed to that room. Hopefully, him being under Bobby's tutelage and getting coached again by Ken Norton Jr. and Dan Quinn as well. He's gonna clean his tackling up and be a better tackler, because you miss that many tackles at this level, you're not gonna see the field like ever on defense. Maybe special teams, but yeah, I do think he adds speed to that room, and he adds speed just on the field overall, and he's probably stepping in and he becomes instantly maybe our best coverage linebacker on the team. So yeah, that's what he adds so far, and hopefully he can keep adding some tools to his repertoire and refine his tackling, and he develops into a average, at best, an average player.
Yeah, I definitely would say that it adds another energizer bunny out there behind Frankie Louvu, so to speak, right? We haven't we don't have all that much confidence of what Jordan McGee can bring. He's got to stay healthy, right, for a full season along with Tyler Owens. But that's somebody that you're looking at saying, all right, well, that's another speed lightning bolt they can use, especially as a blitzer at times. So in case anything does happen to Frankie Louvu, you have another speedster there that could obviously replicate not exactly what Frankie does, but be able to replicate the lightning strike, the Energizer Bunny in Kane Medrano, because he certainly has that. Being a former wide receiver, he definitely has that motor that you want, and that speed you could see on his closing speed whenever he's going after the passer. So I think that you'd feel comfortable in that regard. And it's definitely somebody long term that you can look at to say he has the structure to be able to do it. It's just the work ethic and being able to grasp the defense, and that's where Ken Norton comes in, man. And we're definitely going to see this year how the linebackers under his tutelage are going to produce. I definitely think that's going to be something to come around this year. Any last parting words, sir?
No, I think that even with the 5 picks, I know everyone wanted them to trade back, but I think with those 5 picks, they maximized the the picks that they had, and I know everyone wanted them to get an edge. Obviously, we wanted them to get an edge as well. I wanted them to get an edge, but again, I'm just gonna go with the trust trust their process right now, because again, everyone had questions about last year.
Yeah.
They did what we haven't done in 30 years. So Yeah, that's all I got to say. I'm just gonna see how rookie minicamp plays out, OTAs, training camp, and all that, and September cannot get here fast enough.
Right. And I know this is going to be the start of bit season, of course. And yesterday I spent a lot of time working on my yard, but I also got sunburnt because I was just out my wife beater, and I was mowing my lawn. My neighbor from across the street, like an elderly guy, stops me as I'm mowing. I was like, "What's up, man?" He's like, "Something wrong with his truck." So I go in, pop the hood, whatever. Takes forever just to be able to unlock his hood. Older van, doesn't start. So like I go get my jumper cables, help him do it, won't start. And he's like asking me if I know anything. I'm like, dude, I'm the worst person to be asking this to. And he's like, give somebody you can call. And I'm like, I have nobody to call, like around here, my dude. But I got a number for him and I hooked him up. And then later on, our other neighbors were walking their dog, and he goes, I was like, we got to watch a Commanders game this season. I'm like, oh yeah, what's up? Absolutely, man. So he comes up my driveway, we're having a talk. And he's like, yeah, when I was a kid, the neighbor behind me ran like the entertainment side for the Redskins, and so I got to see all these different Redskins players comes in, and he's like, my favorite player ever is Darryl Green, and like he just ripped a fart like halfway through, like mid sentence. Like it was unmistakable, legit, like. And I was like, oh man.
That's funny.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine. He probably went on that walk. Was like, I definitely busted ass right in front of that guy. He's a cool guy. Definitely. I guess I'll watch a game with him now. He definitely seems like my normal
clearly,
dude.
Yeah, he feels comfortable enough to
right.
Just bust one out in front of you.
All right, everybody. That's going to wrap us up for this episode. If you made it this far, you're frickin' champion. You lasted longer than Reed did. Apparently, his kid started playing with another kid, and the parent was playing with them, and Reed felt bad. Which I can understand. That's why you probably shouldn't podcast and take your kid to the park at the same time. I would imagine that's how a lot of these like missing kids happen, to be honest.
Right.
All right, everybody. We'll see you guys again, possibly Wednesday. I'm not 100% sure. Most likely next Sunday. We'll talk about the schedule and how we're going to roll everything out, like I told you guys, and make sure that we change our schedule so everyone can get on here. It's just hard with new babies and such. You know what I mean? All right, everybody. Yeah, we'll see you again probably on Sunday. I'm Kyle.
I'm Hall.
And we'll see you guys then. Washington football. Woo!
Peace.
What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.